I thought when I transitioned in October 1st of 2010, that was it. I was going to be who I am, just relax, have fun, be myself. I never planned to be out here speaking. I want to just have fun, and I'm having fun now in a different way, helping the cisgender community understand who we are, that we're not bad people. We are police officers, firefighters, judges, lawyers, politicians. We run the gamut of good things that people are doing out there, and not what the politicians are saying or the news report. And so me helping the police officers, when I do the training with them, I'm giving them a different light of what they've been told and what they're going to deal with in the streets. And then it's all about respect. And that's what it is.
What do you really know about people who are born transgender? Have you ever met someone who's transgender? Well, if you're like me, you're curious but hesitant to ask questions. Well, welcome to Demystifying the Transgender Journey. In our conversations with people who were born transgender, their families, friends, and the professionals who support them, we ask probing questions and discover insightful and educational answers. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. Now let's get right into today's episode. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to another episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. We are so glad you're here because this is a place where real stories, honest conversations, and authentic voices come to life from people who were born transgender, their family, friends, coworkers, and healthcare professionals who are allies along on their journey. I'm Lynn Murphy, one of your hosts, author, speaker, leadership coach, and founder of Women Who Push the Limits, and I'm the cisgender half of this host team. Joining me is the amazing Wendy Cole, an affirmed woman, gender diversity consultant and speaker, and living proof that it's never too late to embrace your true self. She transitioned at age 67 and now helps agencies, businesses, and organizations navigate this evolving social landscape through education and training on transgender and LGBTQ+ issues. Our mission with Demystifying the Transgender Journey is to bring you educational conversations that open minds, touch hearts, and hopefully inspire change. So be sure to share these stories out with people that you know who are ready to learn more about the transgender experience. Now, today's guest brings a powerful blend of service, visibility, and quiet courage to the conversation. Kendra Holmes is someone who has spent her life showing up for her country, for her community, and for the people who are still finding the courage to show up as themselves. Karen is a passionate advocate for helping others transition, not just in the medical and social sense, but really in the deep human sense. She's committed to educating those who are not transgender, helping to dispel myths and foster understanding by simply living her truth as one of millions of people born transgender who live ordinary, meaningful lives and contribute in extraordinary ways to making this world a better place. Now, Karen recently retired from the federal government, and I'm going to ask her in a minute to tell about her amazing career and her volunteer work. We're also going to talk to her about her upcoming memoir, which will soon be released. We'll let you know when that's happening. And in that memoir, she talks about her life since she transitioned in October of 2010. So today she joins us to share her journey, her insights, and her belief that life is most fulfilling when we're true to ourselves and supportive of one another. So Karen, we are delighted to have you join us today. Thank you so much for being here on Demystifying the Transgender Journey.
Thanks, Lynn, and glad to be a part of this show, as well as with you too, Wendy. So it's really, really great to be here, and Happy New Year to everybody out there that's watching the show too. And I hope your new year is starting out in a big bang this year.
Well, Karen, let's start with your career because you've had such an amazing career and the professional side of it plus the volunteer side of it. And you're the best person to describe that to our audience. And after we talk about that, we'll get into more of your life story.
Sure, Lynn. Well, I'll start when I started transitioning. I transitioned on October 1st of 2010. And before that, I started dressing in women's clothes at the age of 13. And from then, I just basically kind of like watched when my parents were going to be coming home so I could get back to normal clothes and stuff like that. And I'm sure a lot of trans people out there have gone through the same opportunity like that. And, later in life when I transitioned, I feel like, I was like Superman. literally I would go to like maybe the gas station and change in there, or I'd change in the car. I was quick at it. So I was able to, disguise myself without really being known and found out about for years. And then finally I went to a conference in 2010 called the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference, which is now called the Philadelphia Wellness Conference. And there, just basically seeing 5, 6, and 7-year-old kids playing and having a blast, and their parents were supporting them. I was like, wow, this is really blowing me away. And then, of course, going to some of the sessions to listen, I'm like, these stories are pretty much almost like mine. And so I left that conference gun ho, fired up, and ready to transition. And I stopped off first thing Monday when I got to work to see a friend of mine who happened to be one of the attorneys at the agency. And of course, where was she? On travel for work. And then also took another week after that on vacation. And I'm like going nuts for 2 weeks that I wanted to talk to her to see how I needed to go about transitioning on the job. And then when she got back, we went through what we needed to go through, and she said, let me talk to someone in civil rights and inclusiveness, the director, tell her my story without telling my name. And she said she was in tears. And I'm like, wow. And I said, okay, I'll meet with her. And then, of course, the CEO of our agency said, do whatever it takes to make this happen. And I kind of thought everything would be pretty much okay because I had been with the agency already for like 10 years, and I felt a magnificent job. I was the trust officer for the Pacific cluster. So I made sure that a lot of the AmeriCorps members' paperwork and everything got into the system okay. When they finished their volunteer work, they got out of the system okay. And then I made sure that they got their education award to use for school or to pay back federal student loans, which I also set up the payments for and everything. So, I was pretty comfortable as far as transitioning on the job, but I knew there was one particular group there was going to be an issue with. And I said, I'm going to come back to work in 2 weeks and there's going to be an issue. And I was correct as far as that department. And later, they just basically said, we were sorry. You really are a good person. And, we're not drinking buddies, but
Can you tell us the agency you work for or who you work for? Because you've got quite a background, amazing background.
Sure. The name of it was the Corporation for National and Community Service. And then a couple of years ago, they rebranded the name to AmeriCorps, which made total sense because I know a lot of times when I told people I worked for the Corporation for National and Community Service, they're like, is that federal because of the word corporation? Yeah. And now it's saying it as AmeriCorps because we are a federal agency. And so, yeah, it made a lot of sense.
So you're actually a federal employee. You weren't retired. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. I retired after 24 years and 4 months. Actually, I wanted to make it this year, 2026, to retire, which I would then had 25 years in. But Doge came into our agency last year. In April, I got put on administrative leave with pay. And I said, you know what? This is crazy. I don't like what's going on. You know what? I'm just going to go and retire this year instead of next year because I don't know what this administration is going to do to our agency. Every governor across the country supported AmeriCorps because we are there before FEMA gets there. We're there after FEMA leaves. So we were a good fit for them because, they didn't get left behind. And so I was part of the cadre team, which I would go sometimes out to the FEMA camp and set up things and coordinate things between FEMA and the AmeriCorps members that were out in the field. So it was nice to go on those disasters as well as with the Red Cross disaster team going across the country and helping when needed. So yeah, it was good.
Amazing work that you were doing and so needed. And as a government agency, was it military? I know you talked about working with veterans and things, but it's not necessarily the military.
No.
Okay.
AmeriCorps is like Peace Corps, but only domestic. And nice thing about it, we paid our volunteers education awards to use for school or to pay back student loans. And that was a big push too as well.
Well, and I know you did a lot of volunteer work and are still doing volunteer work after you've retired, right?
Yeah.
So, and it
Yeah,
sounds like it's along the same lines.
pretty much. I mean, I was part of the Maryland Defense Force, which supported the Maryland National Guards, and I did that for 5 years. And then the colonel then asked me about coming over to the United States Veterans Reserve Corps because of my background. I mean, getting NCO Soldier of the Year in 2012 from the Maryland Defense Force and the Maryland Association. And then in 2013 by the State Guard Association of the United States, I got Soldier of the Year of the country. So I guess he figured, yeah,
Wow.
we want you to come over here with us. I mean,
Congratulations. That's amazing.
That's huge. Thank you for your service.
Thank you so much,
but
Karen.
and so right now, being with the United States Veterans Reserve Corps, I'm Chief Warrant Officer 3. And we do a lot of stuff in the community. We have also been down to North Carolina twice after the flooding down there. And our battalion, I love our battalion. This is the Maryland Battalion. We've got 8 other battalions out there, but we're the best.
Well, you've done so much in service, your career, your volunteer work, all that service to humanity. And thank you so much for that. So let's back up into your early life. You said at 13 you started dressing in your mother's clothes. Did you have any idea before that that there was something different about you or any kind of feelings?
I had not a clue. And I wasn't the type to get on the computer and check all these things out. And of course, I did see some stuff, on transvestites and cross dressers on the internet. And even it still didn't click to my head that I was transgender until I went to the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference. And that's where, oh, that's who I really am. And so that's why I took the necessary steps to go ahead and transition. It was a tough decision because, as far as before that time of transitioning, I was seeing a doctor in regards to my dressing and stuff like that. My parents really didn't know what I was doing. They just knew that I was troubled about something, and that's why they sent me to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist put me on medication, and still I never said anything to my parents about anything. They just thought that I was like, depressed and everything else. And the doctor even classified me as multiple personalities. And the reason why he thought that is because one, I wanted at one time wanted to be with the police. Two, playing baseball. If I had played my cards right, I might have been playing professional baseball, playing shortstop. And a guy said he was going to send a scout from the New York Mets to see me play. But I just didn't have that little push, I guess, that parents, when your father sees you doing, oh, yeah, you need to play, stuff. And I never had any of that from him. And I don't blame him at all. I mean, it would have been kind of interesting to be the first transgender person playing Major League Baseball. Uh, but that didn't happen. I guess timing's everything.
Yeah, just wasn't what you were meant to do at the time.
Yeah. And then I also DJ'd. And literally, when I DJ'd, I made my own fake radio station number. It's called Whale 69.9 FM. And so it was Washington hottest album, Long Excitement, 69.9 FM. And so I would make cassette tapes. And so I would play music at parties and I would say those fake names, you're listening to the hottest DJ in town. That's DJ, the Disco Bear, here in Whale, where Washington dances, 69.9 FM. And people, when I made cassette tapes for people that they could listen to, while they're in the car with maybe a friend of theirs, they'll pop the tape in without them seeing it. And they actually thought it was on the radio that you just said your name on the radio and stuff like that. And it was funny because a couple of my friends, they said, oh, their friend went looking for that station in their car. And they're like, it doesn't go that low to 69.9.
So you were really creative.
Yeah. And I had other people's voices saying, you're listening to DJ the Disco Bear and stuff like that.
Oh.
I would pop their voice in. And the only thing I
Wow.
didn't do was commercials. But it was
Fun.
fun. And so the doctor thought that every one of those people in my life who I was was precise, including Karen, because he got to see me as Karen one day, and he thought all of us had distinct personalities, but Karen was the strongest. And so
Now, how old were you when you were talking with the doctor?
I want to say probably somewhere between
Okay.
25 and 30. And
Okay.
so I did wean myself off of the medication. It was lithium, by the way.
Right.
And I weaned myself off of that. And actually, I did go see another doctor. It was a Christian doctor. And I'm like, you know what? Everybody's got their views about who I am and what I need in my life, like God and all this. And I'm like, you know what? I'm out of here. And so things just started changing for me. And then when I went to the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference, that was it. I
So it
knew,
just kind of clicked
I,
there.
I
yeah,
went to that conference in June of 2015, and it was mind blowing.
yeah. It,
I had grown up and even into my adult life being told, oh, you're one of the only ones who thinks like this. You're the
mm.
only one who believes that you're a girl. And at that conference that day that I went, there were over 6,000 people there.
When I went in 2010, I would say it was about a good 3,000. So,
Yeah.
Well,
so
during adolescence, did you have any issues? Did you date? Did you date women? Did you like boys? What was because during adolescence, all those hormones start
oh,
raging.
yeah.
What was that like for you?
I definitely like girls. I still do now. um, but I like girls. I dated girls, relationships with girls and stuff like that. No problem with it. But there was here that in my head, this is who I just kept dressing, but not connecting all the dots that would have made sense to me, even back then when I was dressing. And it was weird because even when I played baseball and football, I was wearing women's panties underneath of it and stuff. And I was really afraid, like, especially when I played football, here I'm
Oh,
wearing
God.
that underneath. And then if I got hurt, but
Back. How do you
and
explain that in the hospital?
I was nervous that something might happen, but it never did.
So how did you cope with that nervousness?
Just concentrated on playing the game. You know,
Oh, okay.
obviously, during football season, that was what I did then. And then when baseball season came up, that was my game. I mean, if I had my choice, I would have played baseball 7 days out of the week. That's how
Mhm.
much I loved it. And I was good at it, I have to say.
Yeah.
Now it's so funny because 2 years ago, me and a coworker, we were out at work and we decided to go out back at lunchtime and throw. I swear I felt like I threw like a girl, you know, here going there. And literally that was within 10 feet. And I'm like going nuts. I'm like, wait a minute. I was supposed to be playing a Major League Baseball. And I can't even throw a ball now.
Oh,
Well, it sounds like you were fitting in, at least from society's point
Yeah.
of view. And a lot of people we've talked to have used drugs and alcohol and other things to compensate for their dysphoria, or the feelings that didn't seem to fit with what society thought you should be in this box. Was there anything like that with you?
That's funny that you said about the drugs and stuff. And that's something I never got into was drugs or anything like that. I had, some of my fellow players, they did drugs and stuff like that. But to me, my natural high was playing ball. That was where I got it at.
mhm.
But I will have to say one thing back when in high school, I used to chew chewing tobacco. And what I would do is take a pinch of it and wrap it with chewing gum and stuff like that, so that wouldn't taste much of the tobacco flavor. And I did it a couple of times before this one particular game. I got up to the bat, and here's the ball coming so slow to me, and I got a double out of it too. And everybody's like making fun, like, you got to stick to that chewing tobacco and stuff. I'm like, no, I need my senses really. And that was my last time chewing tobacco. And but I wanted to feel like, a ball player, and that's what they did back then. And of course now is what, bubble gum. So
Well, so once you had this experience in Philadelphia, it seemed like that was kind of the catalyst for you, that you went to
right.
this conference, it clicked for you, that you said, big aha, this is who I am. And then what did you do about that?
As soon as I left that conference, my head is just click, 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 click. Who am I going to see at work? Who do I need to talk to? How am I going to go about transitioning on the job? I had no idea, this could be I'm out of a job, basically it's thinking. But I did remember hearing a little bit about the support that the transgender community would get within the federal government. So I'm like thinking, okay, it might be okay. But it's the attitude that I knew I was going to have to deal with other people with their religious opinion, their opinions as far as who they, what they think, their views and stuff. And like I said, when I, knew I was going to transition at work, there was one department that I knew I was going to have a problem with. And I was dead on about that. And they would make up stuff like, oh, Karen looks like she's going to be dressing up, going to a club or a party or something like that. And I never dressed like that. I think it took a month before I even wore a dress coming into the office, because I always wore nice slacks and a blouse and stuff like that. I didn't want it to be throwing it in your face to the women.
Right.
When I went to the bathroom, oh, and my agency did a fantastic job. We had 3 floors, 2 buildings joining together. So the one that was outside my office, it was like 2 stalls for women, 1 stall for men, and 2 urinals. So they converted them to a single-use bathroom, which was great. And then of course there were people coming from the other floors to use the single-use bathrooms and stuff. And one of the ladies who was our union president, she goes, I am not to say that, we're happy, but we're happy that you came out like this because now we got single-use bathrooms. Oh, you're taking it all on me. So, yeah, they were doing that. And I mean, literally, I said, well, if I got to go, I got to go. I'll use the other side instead of going up or down 2 floors, But it was a good challenge, shall I say, that people got to understand
Mhm.
me and stuff down the road. And they knew, it's like, I'm not there to what most people think. Trans people are going into the bathrooms to scope under the
Oh,
poor
yeah.
women and stuff or assault them. And that wasn't the case.
No.
So you had the conversation with your superior, with HR or whatever, before you showed up in women's clothes, before you did HRT, any of that stuff. You had that conversation first, is that right?
Yeah, we had I call it my transition team. So it was me, the Civil Rights and Inclusiveness Department, the director and the director's assistant. And every week we would meet and talk. And so what happened was we came up, the director said, talk to the agency CEO. They put in their full support behind this. They said, make it happen. And so they said, okay, we want to do a 3-month game plan that you will not tell anybody at the agency that we're going to be doing this. And that way we can roll it out on the same day, the same time across the country. And so that was how we did it. And I almost thought it was going to get let out because there was a coworker. I was showing her a picture, but some people, it's like, and I get on my mom all the time about this, starts flipping through. I'm like, wait a minute, you don't know what's behind those pictures. And that's what she did. And she goes, who's this girl in here? Is that a girlfriend or somebody you're seeing? I'm like, no. So with the transition team, actually that weekend, because we met every Monday morning, I was on Facebook and I saw Donna Rose's picture on there, and I started looking at some of the things that Donna Rose did. And I'm like, wow, I wish I was having Donna Rose do my training at the agency. I get to work that Monday, and we were having our transition meeting, and they said, we decided we're going to go with Donna Rose. I'm like, how did you even know about that? That's what I was thinking about over the weekend. And we're going to go with them. I'm like, great, we're going to go with her. And so I got back to my desk after our training, and I sent Donna an instant message on Facebook. And I said, Donna, I just found out that you're going to be doing my training at my agency. That's like the 9th inning. We're down by 3 runs. It's 2 outs in the game. You're coming to bat and hit a grand slam. And Donna typed me back. She goes, yes, we're going to hit a home run. So don't worry. I was like, yay. And the training went so well. I mean, the only issue that came up during the training was about the use of the bathroom.
Oh,
And we
wow.
had that planned out already and stuff. And it went really, really good. And everybody accepted. I came back to work 2 weeks later and I had gifts on my desk, cards on my desk saying welcome, people stopping me because I was the safety officer for the agency and walking around all day to check things out. And I had a couple of the ladies stop me that had offices back then. And they said, look, if you need to get away, feel free to come to my office and just sit and take it easy. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And
Wow.
that's the kind of response I got when I got back.
So you had
Nice.
good support there when you came back.
Yeah.
Did you have other groups you belonged to or other,
Mm.
transgender friends or anything like that that's supporting you through this change?
Well, here's the kicker, because of my volunteer stuff, I volunteered with the Red Cross, CERT, which is Community Emergency Response Team, and then RSVP, which is Retired Seniors Volunteer Program. Each and every one of them, 2 weeks before I transitioned, I spoke with each one individually to say, I got something to tell you. And they gave me this funny look like, what are you going to tell me? And I said, I'm transgender and I'm going to be transitioning full time in a couple of weeks. And each and every one of them went, whew, I thought you were going to leave the organization. They don't know the other volunteer stuff I do. They don't know each other. They all had the same response. And I said, you
Wow.
know what that means to me? They valued what I brought to their agency as far as who I am. And they didn't care that I was transgender. They just didn't want me to leave the organization. So
They
I felt,
valued you as a human being, didn't they? Rather than
Exactly.
what
yeah,
your sex organs look like or how you dressed.
yeah,
I mean, that's the
exactly.
way it should be, Karen. I wish everybody would have that experience that you had.
Absolutely.
Well, when I went on my second disaster thing, I've been to Joplin, Missouri for the tornado victims. I was down in Houston for Harvey. And I kept thinking, I said, what if somebody there knows that I'm transgender? But yet, I'm thinking to myself, I'm here to serve them. I'm here
Right.
to feed them. I'm here to give them water. I'm here to provide a sleeping place for them. And they're going to judge me. But I had none of that happen while I was
Right.
there.
That was all in your own mind.
Yeah, it was something that just popped in my head to deter me from going to do the mission that I was, assigned to do.
Mm.
So many people in our community live with all these thoughts in their minds continually that actually block them from being who they really are.
What kind of support did you have from your family?
I told a couple of my cousins because I wanted to break the news to my mom. And when I told my mom that I was going to transition, she basically didn't know. But she
Mm.
said, I'm here to love you unconditionally. When I told her what my name was going to be, something that she had never told me before in my life, she said if she had a girl, she was going to name it Karen. I just totally lost it at that point.
Right.
My
Wow.
my dad, when I talked to him, it was done in 5 minutes, but I elaborated more about another 20 minutes. And he just basically said, I understand. He says, who am I to judge? And I said, Dad, you got any questions you want to ask me? And he goes, I do have one. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, And he said, are you going to keep your last name? And I said, yeah. He said, okay. Like it was no big deal. It was
Oh,
okay. And then I talked to my brother and everything was okay. I told him remember when we were little and I was dressing? And he goes, yeah, well, I said I'm transgender. And he just said, just give me time to adjust. And that was that. My stepsister, who I really call my sister, I told her, okay, no problem there at all. I did have a couple uncles on my mom's side who were standoffish at first. One of them adjusted probably in 6 months, which was great. Her other brother, it was like 10 years. Finally, after 10 years, He's opened up to me. He tells me he loves me. He's happy to talk to me because literally I told him after my grandmother passed away, I told him, I said, look, we're family. We should be talking together. And it was this, oh, like, we are. And so I found out later that he was talking to some of my cousins, trying to get them to go against me. And I was really upset at that point. And I said, if he passes away, I am not going to the funeral. He's out of my life at that point. And then now things have changed. I mean, literally a 180-degree turn. When he talks to my mom, he's always asking my mom how I'm doing, say hi to Karen and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, that was a big change because I was never expecting that to happen. And it did. And at my dad's family reunion on his side, he would introduce me, this is Karen. And everybody kind of knew. And I never had any problem with anybody on that side of the family at all. And it went good.
Boy, that's such a wonderful story, Karen. Faith or religion, does that play a part in your life?
Big time. I mean, when I was little and dressing all the time, I was always praying to God, why do I keep dressing? And I never got an answer. But God has his timing on everything. And I'm not trying to push religion out there to your audience or anything, but this is what happened with me.
This is your story.
Yeah. And I constantly prayed about it for years. And then when I met Ashley, who introduced me to the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference, I go out there and I'm like, this is who I am. And I'm thinking, God, why couldn't you show me this before? When people ask me, are you sorry that you didn't transition earlier? And I said, to be honest with you now, when it took the time to the age of 53 to transition, I know that if I had did it when I was younger, I probably would have been this wild child out there. So that was the honest part about it, that God's timing put it to where now's the time because I've been able to adjust. I can feel out, I can do the right thing. And like me and Wendy were saying earlier, it's the timing of it. We don't know what our path is going to be down later. I thought when I transitioned in October 1st of 2010, that was it. I was going to be who I am, just relax, have fun, basically be myself,
live your life as a
and
woman.
all of this good stuff. Exactly. I never planned to be out here speaking. That's
Likewise.
the kicker about it. I'm like, yeah, I want to just have fun. And I'm like, I'm having fun now in a different way.
Yes,
Training,
exactly.
speaking, lifting up trans people, helping the cisgender community understand who we
Absolutely.
are. That we're not bad people. We are police officers, firefighters, judges, lawyers, politicians. We run the gamut of good things that people are doing out there. And
Absolutely.
you all need to know it. Not hear what the politicians are saying or the news report and stuff like that. And so me helping the police officers when I do the training with them, I'm like giving them a different light of what they've been told and what they're going to deal with in the streets. And then it's all about respect. And that's what it is.
Well, tell us about your speaking and training. Who's your audience and what kind of things do they come to you to learn?
Two different sides of audience, actually three. The trans community, I speak to them. I also speak to the cisgender community who might work for federal government or college. I did 5 years in a row with University of Maryland medical students. And with them, it was like this. Here's my story. This is what I dealt with when I went to the hospital or to the doctors. You're going to either make or break the life of a transgender person under your care. This is what you need to understand and deal with. And so they got that taste of it there. I partnered up with DOJ CRS, Community Relations Services Department, with DOJ for 7 years. And I was going around speaking to law enforcement officers in regards to how they should treat us and when they make a traffic stop and all this kind of stuff. So in the traffic stop, it's basically saying, hey, my name is, instead of saying Officer Joe Brown with Montgomery County Police, I stopped you for speeding. That's it. No, you don't know if you're stopping a trans person or a cisgender person. Well, let's start putting this into your speech. My name is Officer Joe Brown. I'm with Montgomery County Police. I stopped you for speeding. I go by pronouns of he and him. How would you like me to address you? And that will bring the level of anxiety for us as trans people down, because we know, hey, obviously this officer's gone through some kind of training. I know he respects me by doing that. And so that's how the training was. And then last week, I spoke with Montgomery County Police, and joining in that training was Tacoma Park City Police, Rockville City Police, and Park Police. But there was 39 officers that had not hit the streets yet. So that was great, because now they're getting it from us before you go on the street, and not hear it from their FTO, which is field training officer, teach them or send them different things to talk about.
You know, you and I both have lived experience,
Exactly.
and that makes a huge difference.
I tell people, at conferences, let's say that we're on a panel, you and I, Wendy, we're on a panel, and there's doctors on there who have said, I've gone through studies of 5 years about the transgender community, and great. Well, I thank you for going through that training. I'm sure you know a little bit more. But me, Wendy, we are living life proof 24/7,
Exactly.
years. We have the experience. You need to have us at the table, not just you as a doctor or anything else, because we're going to give you life experience stories that we're going through each and every day.
And they're just giving you academics, and you're given real life.
Exactly.
Real life. And that's one of the ways in which our community will be more accepted by the rest of society, is when they start to see people like you and me and other people that Lynn and I have been interviewing. They get to see them in public, their entire lived experience, their careers, and everything that they're contributing to society. And that's huge. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
So what kind of response do you get from these officers, whether they're the rookies who haven't been out on the street yet, or they're the commanders who've been there for 30 years, and you may have a different leaning?
The year before last, I spoke at San Francisco Sheriff's Department, and there was 2 groups actually in that one. And first group went great. Second group, I had one officer who had been on the force for 45 years. And when I was talking to the group, he said, I need to stop you for a second. You have brought so much into our lives to let us understand what's going on. And I just want the rest of the officers in this room know, even though I've been on the force for 45 years, I know this has been a great training. And those trainings that I did, it was myself, the subject matter expert, and then there was a police officer that was also partnered up with me, who was doing the law enforcement session as far as that. So it wasn't just me by myself, it was me and the law enforcement officer. And that way they're hearing it from the law side, and then from me, they're hearing it from the community side. And we would tell them stuff like, go to TDOR every year. You're going to hear stories about people that are going through this. And then in Prince George's County, there was 2 transgender women who were murdered. And when they got murdered, the 3rd District Commander for Prince George's County called me up and said, is there anything you could do to help get these girls off the street? They were sex workers. And I said, well, let me give it a shot. I don't know, but let me give it a try. But I said, what I want to do is I want to do a ride along with these officers, because the officers that were assigned to that beat just drove up and down the red district. And all they did was they wanted to make sure these girls were safe. The commander said beforehand, I had my officers push the girls across the street into DC. DC would come by, push them back over to Maryland side of the street. She said, I don't want to play ping pong back and forth with these girls. Let's see if we can get them off the street. So my drive around with the officers, I would get out of the police car when we saw some of them, and I go up to them and talk to them and say, hey, look, is there any way we can help you get off the street? By the way, I'm transgender. I'm not a police officer just because you saw me getting out of a police car. We want to make sure that you're safe. Is there any way we can help you get off the street? And hearing the stories that I heard, it was basically like, I need a job. I need a place to lay my head at night. I need food on my table. And so I went back and talked about this to a coalition that I started, which was the Prince George's County Trans Coalition. And so then there was two employees from the Prince George's County Memorial Library System that said, hey, let's partner up with you, Karen, and call it the Butterfly Project. And what we'll do is help people do resume building, role play across the table with them on job interviews, dress for success and stuff like that. I'm like, this is great. And every time I told this story around the country, because when I talked to the police and stuff, I would tell them, I said, the only reason these girls are out there is because it's called survival sex. They need a place to lay their head at night. They need a job. They need clothes. And so they got it. And I had like Prince George's County Police. They're like the ones that drove up and down the Red District Road.
Right.
They would stop and get out and talk to some of the girls just to see if they're okay. That's the kind of relationship I wanted to do. And when I speak to law enforcement, I'm saying the whole program is I want to bridge a gap between the trans community and law enforcement. And when I did an illustration last week with Montgomery County Police, I stood on one side of the room. I said, this is you guys. Then I walked across on the other side and I said, this is a trans community. We need to meet in the middle of that bridge. And that's how we get to solve a lot of problems, not only for us, but for you, for reporting incidents. Use the transgender person's name. Don't use their birth name because the community doesn't know their birth name. They know them by their name as who they are being transgender. And so they're getting it. I said, when you talk to media, you need to emphasize that too, because when the media does their reporting on TV or in a newspaper, they're not going to put their transgender name. They're going to put their birth name. And then the community doesn't know who they're talking about. So they got that and they understand.
Wow, that's
Right.
amazing work you're doing, Karen. Thank you so much. That needs to go all across the United States.
Absolutely.
But we're having one little problem. And the
Yeah.
problem is getting the transgender people to show up.
Well, can you blame them now? Everybody's afraid of the government at this point.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I mean, like, we were giving free lunches for the community to come by in that area that the two girls were murdered, and they didn't show. And so I told you the library system, I said, look, let's later do a dinner one, but do the dinner in the evening before they go out on the street. Maybe that might draw, but COVID really messed things up for us. So yeah.
Well, and they're probably afraid of being targets too because of all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
But thank you for doing what you're doing. So just thinking about your life and your transition, what were your biggest challenges?
My biggest challenges? Well, let's put it this way. Hearing other women go, you look like you're dressed to go to a party, and I've never dressed like that. Like, come on, give me a break. I think I'm just dressed normal, and to me, that's the way I wanted to do it. I wanted to just blend in and be part of the community. Here's the big thing. Blouses for women, the buttons are on the other side.
Right.
Zippers on pants are on the other side. When I go to the hairdresser, what took me to wash my hair 5 minutes to do, and now it takes me 45 minutes to an hour to do. And then hairdresser, it's 4 to 5 hours. I mean, these are all challenges. And then like now it's like you go to the bathroom, especially for me, being with the military, I've got all my gear on. And it was funny because I talked about this last week with the police. I said, female officers, I know what you got to go through because you got to take your gun belt off and everything else.
Right.
I got to do pretty much the same thing with all my gear, taking it all off before I go to the bathroom. And you guys, all you got to do is zipping down your pants. And everybody started laughing. And, even though that part, yeah, you miss it. But you know what I said? Not in a million years would I go back.
Oh,
No,
absolutely.
it's no regrets whatsoever.
Yep.
Hmm.
No
Are there,
back button.
are there
Yeah.
any other unexpected things about being a woman?
My car insurance went down.
Oh,
When
practical things.
yeah, right after I transitioned, I called Geico up and I said, "Hey, I just transitioned. I'm a woman now. Does my insurance go down?" And they said, "Let me check." And so they showing up, it went down. I'm like, "Yes, that's the advantage of being a woman now." The disadvantages, I think, in decision making in corporate world or whatever, even in the government, it tends to seem like they were taking the opinions of the male employees more than the female.
No, really?
Yeah. And so a prime test with my military group, this was about 12, 13 years ago, there was a big assignment we did up in Baltimore for visitors to go visit the battleships and go on them. And so that first day, my captain set up the schedule, and I'm like, this ain't working well. I didn't tell him that. And he was off doing something else. And I just jumped in and did my thing. And so it went from chaos in the morning to smoothed out in the afternoon. And it was perfect. And then one of the colonels came to our site all late. And he goes, well, we need to do this. And then another colonel jumped in, which was great. He says, no, Corporal Holmes got this. She's got it all squared away. Everything's running smooth and it's perfect. Yes, somebody saw that. And so later that day, one of the colonels gave me a challenge coin for doing a great job. The colonel goes, Corporal Holmes, the general would like to see you. And I'm like, oh crap, what did I do?
Oops.
And so
Yeah.
I go, I slitted him and everything, and he goes, I heard you've been doing a really great job. Goes to shake my hand, and there's the coin in it. And I'm like, whatever you did, Karen, don't drop the coin. And so I got it, and it was great to know that even he recognized it and heard from the colonel that I was doing a great job. And so yeah, it's been awesome. It really has been awesome. But those are the challenges. And even when I was with the federal government as the safety officer for the agency, I felt like I still wasn't getting the respect, even from some of the women there, as far as my position and what I was doing. But I kept hearing through the grapevine, oh, if something goes down, I'm coming to you. I'm not going to my boss. And I'm like, that's great to know that, they see that. And like the day the earthquake hit in our area in DC, I'm like sitting there, I'm like doing my work and I hear the rumble. I'm like, they didn't tell me they were working on that. I'm like, earthquake. And then I just sat there and my phone, it went crazy. People calling me up, asking me what they should do. Because we never had a game plan for earthquake at the agency. And so before I retired, implemented something, especially for those who were coming in from out of state, doing a training or whatever with their departments. It was good.
Do you think some of this pushback, like from the one officer, was because you're a woman, or did he know you were transgender?
No,
What is it the being female that's the issue?
it was being female because
Yeah.
nobody with my military group knew I was transgender until 2016. So I'd gone from 2011 to 2016. Nobody knew except for a couple of people. One captain who because I used to always love taking pictures in my mom's living room, and above the fireplace is the portrait of me and my brother and my mom. And my
Oh.
captain goes, "Is that you in the portrait?" And I didn't want to lie to him. I go, "Yeah, that's me." And I'm like, God, I got to stop taking pictures in front of there. um, and so, yeah, I said, yeah. And so later, what I did was I reapproached that situation. I asked him, and he says, "You're not only a good friend, but you're a great soldier." And he says, "That's why I'm supporting you in everything you do." And so And then when I won the 2 awards in 2012, NCO Soldier Award, a lot of the female soldiers were coming up to me and going, "Great job, you're doing it for us." Yeah, well, I am doing it for you, but I'm also doing it for the transgender community, which I couldn't say anything about
Right.
because
Yeah.
we didn't accept trans people in the military. And then in 2013, when I got the award for Soldier of the Year of the country by the State Guard Association, I'm down in South Carolina at that conference and getting that award, and here female soldiers are coming up and going, "Great job, you're doing it for us." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm also doing it for the transgender community, which I can't talk about."
You couldn't tell
Now,
it. Yeah.
and now I can, and that's the great thing about it all, is I can talk about it now, and it's not a problem.
See, and now it needs to be talked about with the things that are going on in the military, Department of Defense, and some of
They
those.
kick everybody out that are transgender, or if they're overseas, when they get back, boom, they're out.
I
Uh,
know,
you
and
know,
serving their country.
exactly.
And they're losing all that talent and all that experience.
And that's what I talked about a lot of times when I talk to the military, because I've spoken to Fort Detrick, Fort Meade, down at the Navy Yard, and they were for Pride Month. And so they heard the story, and I tell them, I said, "You guys put the training into us, to do what we need to
Mhm.
do to protect this company." And then
Right.
I brought up about a cartoon that was put out the city paper in Washington. I forgot the name of it, but anyway, Trump is sitting on top of this building, and it was the Secretary of Defense standing up there with him. And here's a Scud missile going across the sky and heading toward the Capitol. And the Secretary of Defense said to the president, "We would have taken that out of the sky, but that person's transgender." I'm like, "You are so right, that is exactly it. That you put that training into that soldier, and then you got rid of them." So I'm like,
Mm.
"Hey, we blew that one."
Yeah, that's so sad to have all that talent. And that's one reason we want to highlight you and what you've done in your career. It doesn't make any difference what gender you are. It shouldn't anyway. And
Mhm.
and to say that people who are transgender are, mentally ill or stupid things like that that people are saying, I don't get it. And you're living proof. I wish we could interview all the people who had transitioned and were in the military. It's just not fair. And so that's why we appreciate you planting the seeds, you
Mhm.
being out there speaking, and, Wendy and I doing this. It's just important. We've got to educate. So thank you for being part of that educational effort.
Well, at the end of my TED talk, I did tell people I'm this little pebble about, with this big body of water that's been tossed out into the sea. You're hearing my story. Those
Mhm.
ripple effects of that water is you
Mhm.
now telling our story, that we're good people and we're doing good things out there, and we need you to get out there and tell it. And so
Absolutely.
I love telling that part of it. I don't know how much time we got, but I had a couple of things I wanted to read.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So this first one here, this was written by my mother to a good friend of hers who was kind of distant. And I mean, they were really, really super good friends. And they are finally getting back to being that way now. But the title of the letter to my mom's best friend's husband, because she wrote this to her husband, it said, "A mother's words of a caterpillar to a butterfly. Well, David, under the circumstances right now, I think it's better Kate and me just distance ourselves for a while, because whenever I talk with her, it only makes me feel worse. I know she is having a hard time trying to understand what my son is going through, and she is not interested in reading up on children born this way. Before she can't be supportive of me accepting things the way I have. To her, it's a choice, but for me, it is not a choice whether I accept this or not. He is my son, and I love him unconditionally and always will, and I will stand by him until I die. At this time in my life, I can't take any more upsetting me, especially if they can't have an open mind and be willing to check things out before being so judgmental. Hopefully, one day she might be able to come to grips with this and at least try to understand how I feel and realize what pain and suffering my son has been going through all his life. He has as much right as we have to live his life the way he wants to and be happy instead of living his life the way other people feel he should, just so they can feel comfortable. Their lack of understanding is due to their lack of information which is available concerning transgender children. I've learned a lot in the past 4 weeks. Going to support groups and talking to the pastor has really helped me to better understand and adjust to the way things are. Like they said, it's not about me, it's about him, and his happiness is not his problem, it's our problem because we make it about us and what we feel and want. That's why I thank God for helping me see beyond the outside appearance and to look into the heart and soul of the individual. For no matter what, inside he is still the same person that I loved before. It's like if you look at a love story book and change the cover to something totally different, once you open the book, it would still be a love story, only the cover has changed. What we all look for in life is not approval, but love. And I've loved Kate all these years, not because of, but in spite of. I'm watching my son drift away right before my eyes and turning into Karen, a beautiful woman. It's like watching a caterpillar transform into a butterfly.
Wow.
Wow, that's
How
wonderful.
beautiful.
Just to round things off. But before I tell you that, my memoir, the title of it, is going to be
Mhm.
40 Years and Wandering No More, Loving My Life, Transgender.
That's wonderful. I can't wait to read that. I'm sure it's remarkable.
Well, I want to read this last thing to you guys before we close out. After I did my TED talk, they wanted the speakers to come on and talk about how would you like to treat others and stuff like that, respecting each other. So the title of my talk, which was a 1 minute talk, the title of mine was Respecting Each Other. Treat others as you wish to be treated is not just a cliche, it's the golden rule in life. I have feelings, a mind, and a heart who serves and cares for others. I am a human being and wish to be treated as one, like you would treat your mother, father, children, siblings, and friends. Just like you treat them with respect, I too want to be treated with respect. The only difference between them and me, I am a transgender woman, one who works for the federal government, should I say, retired now from the federal government after 24 years and 4 months, a military veteran who was given the honor as Soldier of the Year by the State Guard Association of the United States in 2013. So please treat me as you would like to be treated. It's the golden rule and the right thing to do.
Wow, Karen, that's so
Very
impressive.
nice. Very nice.
So it is about time to wrap up, but one question I did have is what advice do you have for young people or middle-aged people or even older people who are struggling with this self-acceptance, struggling with, society versus who they know themselves to be? What would you tell them?
It's funny that you asked that. So, what I've always had in my game plan in talking with the younger trans people or an older one, it doesn't matter. I'm looking at the fact that you are just transitioning. And for me, in 2015, I got honored in the Platform magazine for up and coming aspiring women with a platform. And I was among 31 other women around the world. And so having that platform for what I do, I want the other trans people that are just starting out, build yourself a platform so when you tell people that you're transgender, they don't care. They only care about what you're bringing to their organization, your friendship with them. All of that stuff matters. And if you do that, then people will accept and say, I don't care if you're trans. I know you and I understand what you do and how you do it. And that's what they accept. They feel that more than they do the fact that I'm trans.
Well,
Exactly.
I think, like I said in the introduction, you keep showing up and serving. And those two things, that it's kind of what you're saying too, for people to show up, be who they are, let people know who they are, serve others, and be an example.
Yeah. And don't get totally upset with people who might misgender you or whatever, especially if it's the first time. When we transition, and I've told people this, you're not the only one that transition. Your
Mm.
spouse, your children, your
Oh,
family,
absolutely.
your friends, your coworkers, they all transition with you. So you got to have grace for that. This has happened to me last week. Literally, I had a ball cap on, my hair's up in a bun, jeans on, and I went to Ace Hardware, and the guy's like, at first he goes, "Thank you, sir," and then he changed real quick, and he recognized, and I didn't get. I said, "No problem," and then I got home and I said, "You know what? I do look like a guy with hair pulled up, and I got a ball cap on, and I'm
Exactly.
wearing like I'm going out to chop wood in the backyard with jeans on." So, and I totally understood that, and that's the kind of response we need to teach the trans community, especially the kids, that they
Right.
need to just give grace.
Yeah, wonderful point. Thanks, Karen. Well, anything else that you have to share with our audience before we wrap this up today?
If they want to get in touch with me, feel free to email me at kkholmes@kkholmes.com, and put on the subject line, the question they have or whatever. My biggest thing is be sensitive, especially us older, which I told Wendy earlier, we're the veterans out there. If you hear
Right.
somebody speaking like they're going to commit suicide or they're down or whatever, go with those feelings and reach out, because I've had two people that gave me somewhat signals and I didn't really tune into it. And now I feel with God's help, I'm definitely tuned in to hearing stuff like this now. And I wish I could have been for those other two.
Oh,
So,
you're here and you're serving a lot of people, Karen. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
you know,
Wendy, Wendy, anything
Um,
else?
this was fantastic, Karen, and you're so inspiring.
well, thanks, Wendy. Thanks.
I
You
I second that.
know, the one thing I used to hear a lot of times is, people saying that you saved my life. And I'm like, I'm just speaking the truth. And, all of us who are transgender, we are like DNA. We all have very close and similar stories, but there's going to be that one difference that separates us. And that could be
Mhm.
the one that's going to help that other person.
Exactly. Because a lot of people that we've interviewed,
Uh,
no story is the same. Everybody's unique. They've lived their lives and they've done their journey their way.
And there's similarities, there are threads that run through
Oh,
a lot of them.
absolutely that too.
Wendy's right. Everyone is unique, and it's a wonderful story. I mean, we just love sharing these stories. Love getting to know the people on a deeper level and sharing these stories out.
well, I'm glad. I'm glad. And, we got to tell our story. Well, Lena, I love the fact that a cisgender woman as
Mm.
yourself is doing a show like this to get the word out and to help the community understand who we are. And I'm
Mhm.
hoping that not just the transgender community is hearing our stories, but the cisgender women and men.
Thank you for saying that about Lynn. She has been
Thank you.
fantastic to collaborate with,
Thank you.
and I have absolutely loved doing this with her.
Well, great,
Wow.
great. You guys are a great team.
Thank you.
Well, we believe we're a great team and we both love doing this and are really so committed to it. And, people who've known me for years are going, "You're in your mid 70s. What are you doing?" And I said, it's the little bit that I can do, as much as I can do at this point. And I think we all have to do things. We just
Right.
saw that in Minneapolis the other day, that we all have to do things. So anyways, let me just wrap this up for today. Karen, it's just been such a heartfelt conversation. And to our audience, Karen leaves us with something that's more than just talking points. She's offered a perspective that's shaped by her time, her life, service, and her lived experience. And to me, her journey reminds us that transition is not a moment, it's a process, and that it unfolds not just within the person, but as she said, alongside families, colleagues, institutions, and it's the whole community that goes with this transition. So she speaks with the voice of someone who took over 40 years to find herself. And now she's chosen to spend the remaining years helping others find safety, dignity, and belonging. Karen's showing us that acceptance doesn't come from slogans or fear or memes on Facebook. It comes from relationships. And as she said, from showing up, by responding to a crisis, or simply listening long enough to let those assumptions fall away so that people can meet people who are transgender, spending time listening. So Karen, thank you for that message. And the other thing that you reminded us of, Karen, is that grace matters. And when we say grace, I think of it as goodwill, of love, decency, forgiveness. So we talk about grace for parents who are learning. This wasn't something that they had a manual that they knew what to do. Grace for institutions that must change, and thank goodness for Karen who's helping them change. And grace for younger generations who are finding their voice, and really for all of us, as we're some struggling more than others to figure out what's going on and to kind of wrap our heads around it. And even for us, just to keep growing into who we're meant to be. So I think Karen's story challenges the lie that transgender people are something to fear. And instead, it really shows the deeper truth that authenticity is an act of self-acceptance.
Mhm.
Service is an act of love for others. And visibility, when it's grounded in compassion, has the power to change lives. And thank you, Karen, for your honesty, for your service, for your commitment to lifting others up, and for changing lives. So on behalf of Wendy Cole and me, Lynn Murphy, thank you to our audience for continuing to be part of these conversations that ask us not just to listen, but to reflect and to learn and to lead with humanity and acceptance. So remember to share this episode. We want to get this out to educate other people and help make the world more compassionate. So share, like, subscribe, and remember, until next time, stay curious and stay kind. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Demystifying the Transgender Journey. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of our fascinating interviews. You can also find more information on our website, thetransgenderjourney.com. So until next time, stay curious and stay kind.